Suge Knight didn't just run a record label. He ran it like a street organization, from alleged extortion and threats.
Suge took me out on the balcony, started talking to me personally.
On the balcony?
On the balcony.
High above?
Like 15 floors. He had me look over the edge, show me how high I was up there.
You scared?
I needed to wear a diaper on that day.
To artists who feared leaving his grip.
Death Row was fun while it lasted. It was what it was, but it was more negative than positive. And right now I'm surrounding myself with positivity. So whenever I speak on Death Row, it brings back bad vibes, and I don't really like dwelling on it.
Death Row Records became as dangerous as it was successful. But how did one man gain that much power in hip-hop? And how far did he go to keep it? In the mid-1990s, hip-hop was highly competitive, and each coast wanted the throne for themselves. One side stood Suge Knight, the feared boss of Death Row Records. On the other, Sean Diddy Combs, the flashy architect of Bad Boy Entertainment. In late 1994, Biggie took over hip-hop with his all-time classic debut album, Ready to Die. The album was filled with hits and catapulted Bad Boy to the top of the game. Death Row was in a slump creatively. Dr. Dre was battling legal issues, and the label barely dropped any albums after Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style. But one night in August of 1995 would change the course of hip-hop forever. August 3rd, 1995, the Source Awards was live from New York City, home of Biggie and Bad Boy. While accepting an award on stage, Suge Knight took a clear shot at Diddy without ever saying his name.
Any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
That comment was widely understood as a direct insult to Diddy, who was known for appearing in Bad Boy's videos and tracks. From that moment on, the tension between the two camps became undeniable. The media framed it as East Coast versus West Coast, but behind the scenes, many believe it was just as much Suge versus Diddy. When Tupac was shot and robbed in New York in 1994, he became convinced that people connected to Bad Boy had prior knowledge of the attack.
So I knew he knew what happened. So I was like, Biggie, what happened? He kept sending me messages like a bitch, like I'm gonna come see you. No, nigga, what happened? While I'm in jail, strangers is telling me, yo, you don't know? Biggie homeboy shot you.
Diddy and Biggie strongly denied any involvement or prior knowledge. While Biggie and Tupac had their differences, Suge Knight and Diddy were at war to be the top label in hip-hop. When Suge Knight later bailed Tupac out of prison and signed him to Death Row, that resentment became known. Tupac's anger became Death Row's anger, and Suge Knight was more than willing to fuel it. Suge Knight understood something critical: beef sells. Once Tupac joined Death Row, Suge positioned Bad Boy not just as competition, but as enemies. Behind the scenes, Suge used intimidation tactics to enforce loyalty and discourage artists from working with Bad Boy or its affiliates. According to producer DJ Quick, Suge had Diddy's baby mama, Misa Hilton, come to his hotel suite after the infamous 1995 Source Awards in New York, where tensions between Suge and Diddy would become public. Quick said Hilton just hung out with Suge and members of the Death Row entourage in the hotel room, a move Quick found surprising given her connection to Diddy. A photo later surfaced showing Suge Knight playing with Justin Combs as a toddler with Misa Hilton nearby. One of the most infamous stories tied to Suge Knight's reputation for intimidation took place at a 1995 Death Row Christmas party. There, a New York promoter named Mark Anthony Bell, who had ties to Diddy's Bad Boy camp, was allegedly pulled into a private room by Suge Knight and several associates. Suge then demanded information about Diddy's home addresses. When Bell refused, he was beaten, robbed, and in one of the most gruesome elements of the story, ordered to drink from a champagne glass filled with urine. Bell rejected that order, tried to escape off a balcony, and was beaten again. Bell later declined to press criminal charges, but accepted an estimated $600,000 civil settlement, highlighting just how dark the atmosphere around death row could become. In 1996, things continued to escalate. When Death Row and Bad Boy walked into the 1996 Soul Train Music Awards, tension was in the air. Tupac and Suge Knight locked eyes with Biggie and Diddy as Bad Boy tried to leave the venue. Guns were allegedly drawn and Diddy ran like a racehorse.
He tells me, because we're riding back in the limousine with Puff now, because Big and them left him out there. He told me, as far as Pac came over there talking about, nah, what, West Side and all this other shit like that. And a woman walked past Big. And when this woman walked past Big, she said, oh, now, Tupac is here. He said, Ma, I ain't scared. I ain't scared of him. You understand? And he said, Pac started saying, nah, what, you fat motherfucker, like that. And Big started saying, what, you know what I'm saying, went back and forth like that. Now, Suge Knight and them, they coming towards. And he said, for no reason, but you know, you don't know what Suge and them gonna do, you don't know what, but C Gutter pulls out the gun. When C Gutter pulled out the gun, the Nation of Islam got in the middle of it. And they stopped all the bullshit. I don't know if Suge seen the gun or not. And Suge them is right there about 15, 20 yards, something like that. You know, if from the end of the steps, they start walking towards this way, and we at the beginning of the corridor where you see the big entrance. Puff jumps down the embankment right there and start running behind the media.
On September 7th, 1996, Tupac attends a Mike Tyson fight in Las Vegas. Later that night, a car pulls up, gunshots are fired, and Tupac is hit multiple times. Suge Knight is also struck with a bullet to the head, but survived. Tupac dies 6 days later. Was it East Coast retaliation? A death row hit? No one knows for sure. The case remains officially unsolved. According to Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a former member of the Southside Compton Crips, now charged in connection with Tupac's murder, Diddy allegedly offered $1 million for the deaths of Tupac and Suge Knight during the height of the East Coast versus West Coast beef. Keefe D made these claims during law enforcement interviews. He alleged that the offer was verbal and not written, and that it was discussed among associates tied to the Southside Crips. With the death of Tupac, retaliation was inevitable. On March 9th, 1997, Biggie was shot and killed in Los Angeles. He just left a music industry party when a gunman fired multiple shots into his SUV at a red light. He died shortly after. The killing remains officially unsolved, and no one has ever been arrested or charged for his murder. Law enforcement investigations have gone decades without a conclusive outcome. Suge Knight has frequently been mentioned in theories about Biggie's death. In the years since Biggie's murder, one of the most controversial theories has come from retired law enforcement itself. Former LAPD detective Greg Kadin has claimed in books and interviews that Suge Knight may have orchestrated Biggie's killing while he was in jail. According to Kadin, Knight allegedly used intermediaries on the outside to pass instructions, relying on gang connections rather than direct contact. One name frequently mentioned in this theory is Wardell Poochie, a known member of Death Row Records and a member of the Mob Piru Bloods. Kading has said that this alleged chain of communication allowed Suge to exert influence even while in custody, but these claims had never been proven in court. The beef between Suge Knight and Diddy never came to a clear end. There were no final answers, no resolution. But before Suge Knight and Diddy became enemies across coasts, Suge had already crossed paths with another powerful figure. Before Bad Boy, there was Eazy-E. What began as a contract dispute quickly escalated into something more deadly.
Suge tried to destroy my record company with the help of others, Dre.
The beef between Suge Knight and Eazy-E began in the early 1990s as the rap industry was shifting. Eazy-E co-founded Ruthless Records and was one of the most respected rappers on the West Coast. But when Dr. Dre and other artists wanted out of their Ruthless contracts to leave the label, tensions began to rise. Suge Knight, already known for his intimidating presence, stepped in to help Dr. Dre and others secure their release from Ruthless. Suge used strong-arm tactics, including threats and intimidation, to pressure Eazy-E and his manager Jerry Heller to free Dre and others from their deals so they could start up Death Row Records. Some reports suggest Suge threatened Eazy-E's family as leverage, even showing Eazy-E a piece of paper with his mother's address saying, "I know where your mama stays." According to West Coast rapper and close friend of Eazy, BG Knockout, the meeting where Eazy-E was confronted didn't go how it was presented to him. He says Eazy believed he was going to a meeting with Dre about possibly releasing him from his Ruthless contract, but instead, Suge Knight was there with armed goons. Guns were allegedly visible, people were hidden around the room in closets and under beds, and the door was locked behind him. BG Knockout recounts that Dre wasn't actually present at this meeting, and then Eazy was essentially ambushed. Facing that intimidation, Eazy was pressured into signing paperwork, though he didn't use his real signature on the documents, which later weakened the legal standing of the deal. In the end, this allowed Dre, the DOC, and Michelle A to leave Ruthless Records, effectively transferring them to Death Row. After the multiple threats from Suge, Eazy-E called Jerry Heller and told him that he wants to kill Suge Knight.
I came in the office and he and Eazy were talking, and I said, "What's going on here?" And Eazy said, "You know this guy Suge Knight?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm going to kill him." He said, "This guy's going to be a problem, and I think I should kill him." And I said, let me think this. I said, let me think this thing through. I said, first of all, we're doing $10 million a month with 6 employees. We don't even have a typewriter in the office. I said, we're the most successful startup record company in the history of the music business. And you want to kill this guy? I said, that just doesn't make any sense to me. And you know something? I should have let him kill him.
The tension didn't stay behind closed doors. It spilled straight into the music. In 1992, on his debut solo album, The Chronic, Dr. Dre dropped the track titled Fuck With Dre Day, featuring his newest Death Row signee, Snoop Dogg. The song was a direct diss towards Eazy-E.
Used to be my homie, used to be my ace. Now I wanna slap that taste out your mouth, make it bow down to the rope.
Dre Day wasn't just a diss record, it helped push the beef into mainstream and dominated radio, further humiliating Eazy. But Eazy-E didn't stay silent. In 1993, he fired back with Real Motherfucking G's, a brutal response aimed squarely at Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. The track appeared on Eazy's EP, It's On Dr. Dre 187 Killer, and became the most successful solo release of his career. On the record, Eazy attacked the authenticity of Dre and Death Row, referring to them as studio gangsters and challenging their claims to street credibility.
All of a sudden, Dr. Dre is a G thing, but on his own album covers he was a she thing.
The music video doubled down, reminding audiences of Dre's earlier image before Death Row and using that to ruin his credibility as a gangster. Years later, even Snoop Dogg acknowledged the impact of the diss, admitting that the record knocked and that he came to respect it over time. Unfortunately, on March 26, 1995, Eazy-E died at just 30 years old from complications related to AIDS, only weeks after publicly revealing his diagnosis. According to medical reports and hospital records from Cedar Center Medical Center, Eazy had been admitted after suffering from severe respiratory issues, a violent cough, and rapid weight loss. But his death would later become surrounded by controversy, rumors, and some of the darkest conspiracy theories in rap history. Not long after his passing, rumors began circulating that Suge Knight may have been responsible, with claims that Eazy had been intentionally infected with AIDS. The conspiracy gained attention in 2003 when Suge Knight appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live and made a disturbing comment about how someone could allegedly be killed by injecting them with HIV-infected blood. During that segment, Suge referenced the Eazy-E situation, which many fans interpreted as an admission of guilt.
This is a new thing, right?
Yeah.
See, if somebody gonna do something about it, see, technology is so high, right?
Right.
So if you shoot somebody, you go to jail forever. So the kids, you don't want to go to jail forever, right? So they got this new thing out there. People sell them all the time. They got this stuff they call, they get blood from somebody with AIDS, and then they shoot you with it.
Oh, so that seems bad.
That's a slow death.
Yeah.
An Eazy-E thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay.
Right in the mood. Wow.
Members of Eazy-E's family have directly pushed back against the idea that Suge Knight played a role in his death. In an interview, Eazy's daughter, E.B. Wright, made it clear that she doesn't believe Suge Knight was involved in her father's passing. Despite the denial, the speculation has continued. Some artists close to Eazy-E at the time, including Lazy Bone of Bone Thugs and Harmony, have publicly acknowledged hearing the theory that Eazy-E might have been injected with AIDS. Lazy admitted in an interview that the idea existed before Suge Knight ever mentioned it, and that he personally understood why people latched onto it, even though there's no proof tying Suge to any intentional infection. Eazy-E and Suge Knight's beef never reached any kind of resolution, but Eazy-E wasn't the only artist Suge crossed paths with on his way to the top, because Suge was also making headlines for allegedly intimidating a platinum-selling white rapper at the height of his fame. And next on Suge Knight's list of dark business moves, Vanilla Ice. When Vanilla Ice released Ice Ice Baby in 1990, it became the first hip-hop single to top the Billboard Hot 100 and did so by sampling Queen and David Bowie's Under Pressure. That sample wasn't originally credited, which led to a publishing dispute and eventually a settlement with the original writers. Around this time, Death Row Records didn't exist yet, but Suge Knight was already making moves as a manager and promoter. One of the early stories connected to Suge Knight is that he was managing or working with Mario Chocolate Johnson, a rapper who claimed that Ice Ice Baby was influenced by a piece of music Johnson had the rights to. So rather than attacking Vanilla Ice physically, the real core of the dispute was about publishing royalties, the money songwriters get from sales, radio play, and licensing. Knight and others believed Vanilla Ice owed money or credit that could help fund new ventures. As the story goes, Suge Knight and his crew repeatedly confronted Vanilla Ice about royalties for Ice Ice Baby, claiming that his track used elements of a song written by Mario Chocolate Johnson, the rapper Suge Knight was managing at the time. One famous version of the story claims Suge brought Vanilla Ice out onto a hotel balcony and dangled him, threatening to drop him unless he signed over part of the song's publishing rights. Vanilla Ice has repeatedly denied that this ever happened. In interviews, he's explained that while he did meet with Suge Knight and did ultimately sign over the publishing, it wasn't because he was hung off the balcony or physically threatened. Quote, "That never happened. He didn't hang me over a balcony, we just talked." He clarified that Suge's approach was intimidating, in reputation only, not a physical assault. In other interviews, Ice has said that Suge's bodyguards were present and that Suge Knight's presence was intimidating, but the event was a negotiation over royalties, which Ice agreed to sign. Suge Knight himself didn't deny the rumor at the time, because he liked the idea of being feared and viewed as this sort of mob boss figure. By the time shit settled with Vanilla Ice, Suge Knight had already shown the industry exactly how he operated. But that moment wasn't just a horrifying story, it was a warning, because the same tactics Suge used to secure publishing rights would soon be used toward the very artists who helped build his empire, and no relationship would end more bitter than the one between Suge Knight and Dr. Dre. What started as a partnership that reshaped hip-hop, creating the Chronic, Doggy Style, and the sound of an entire coast, would eventually collapse. Behind closed doors, disputes over money, contracts, and creative freedom began. And when Dr. Dre finally decided he wanted out of Death Row, the fallout wouldn't just be personal, it would become one of the most defining beefs in hip-hop history. In the early 1990s, Suge Knight and Dr. Dre formed one of hip-hop's most powerful labels. Dre, having left NWA, needed freedom from his Ruthless Records contract with Eazy-E and Jerry Heller. Suge Knight reportedly used intimidation tactics, including threats, to push Eazy-E into releasing Dre, paving the way for the founding of Death Row Records, with Dre as its lead producer and head of talent. This deal helped launch Dre's The Chronic and set the stage for Death Row's absolute domination of West Coast rap and hip-hop as a whole. For a time, the partnership worked. The Chronic became one of the highest-selling hip-hop albums ever. Dr. Dre introduced artists like Snoop Dogg to the world. Both men were in control of hip-hop for years. Despite the success, tensions began to rise over creative control and how the label was being run. Dre felt stripped of creative authority and excluded from key business decisions by Suge and his inner circle. Dre's engineer has said that conflicts over artistic direction were a major reason Dre eventually left the label. Meanwhile, Death Row's environment, dominated by gang ties and aggressive business tactics, made for a volatile workplace that Dre increasingly wanted to escape. Dre's legal troubles hindered the release of his second album, which was originally slated to be a sequel to The Chronic. When Tupac signed with Death Row in late 1995, after being released from prison, the atmosphere at the label shifted dramatically. Tupac, at the height of his fame, became Death Row's top artist in terms of buzz and output. Though they collaborated on hits like California Love, Dre and Tupac were not close personally or creatively. Many suggest they often worked separately in the studio and didn't have a deep relationship. On the outside, it seemed as if the two were close, but deep down, there was resentment. Tupac reportedly thought Dre wasn't as dedicated or fast-moving as he was, and there was disputes about production credits and artistic input. The label was also deeply associated with the East Coast-West Coast war, and artists and staff increasingly felt the pressure of both public beef and street-level risk. At first, Dre was on board with dissing the East Coast, but by late 95, he had a change of pace and was looking to mend the bridge between the two coasts. Suge was actually forcing Dre to give up his lead single California Love to Tupac. Being that Pac was hot as fish grease at the time, Suge wanted to capitalize as much as he could off Pac's buzz. This didn't sit well with Dre, that he had to give up his big comeback single, all because of Tupac. Dre was already feeling sidelined by Suge on creative decisions. The focus on beef, especially tied to Tupac's new gangster persona, shifted the label away from Dre's more studio-centric approach. This didn't necessarily mean personal hatred between Tupac and Dre, but it did contribute to a different atmosphere, one less centered around the music and more on street politics and beef. In March 1996, Dr. Dre left Death Row Records and founded Aftermath Entertainment through Interscope Records. Unlike Death Row's approach, Aftermath was marketed as a label centered around quality projects rather than quantity and public drama. After departing from Death Row, Suge made it his personal vendetta to sabotage Dre at all costs. One of the most cited examples involves No Diggity by Backstreet, one of the biggest R&B/hip-hop crossover hits of the 1990s. The track was produced by Teddy Riley. Before the song actually released, Suge Knight used his industry connections to get his hands on it. Suge Knight personally approached Teddy Riley, including a meeting in New York to try and bring him into Death Row to sabotage Dre. Riley ultimately declined. In response, Tupac released Toss It Up, a track built around a beat very similar to No Diggity, using the same sample. This was one of Suge's efforts to ruin Dre's success. Suge's intimidation on Dre went far beyond the music. On February 21st, 1996, just days after Snoop Dogg's acquittal, tensions inside Death Row were already at a boiling point. That's when Suge Knight called producer and rapper Sam Snead into what he described as a routine meeting at the label's offices. Sam Snead was one of Dre's ghost producers. The meeting would turn violent. According to multiple accounts, Suge Knight, Tupac, and members of the Death Row entourage physically assaulted Snead in front of others. Tupac reportedly punched him in the face, leaving visible injuries. This was meant to send a message to anyone from Death Row who works with Dre. Even more disturbing, reports claim Snead was then forced to accompany Suge and the group to a party later that night despite being beaten. So why did this happen? Snead was viewed as disloyal. He had worked with East Coast artists including Kool G Rap, a move that didn't sit well with Death Row during the height of the East Coast-West Coast war. Suge and Pac were also frustrated that Snead hadn't aligned himself fully with Death Row's camp, and there are unverified claims that he was pressured to distance himself from Dr. Dre, something he reportedly refused to do. After that night, Sam Snead never returned to Death Row. His album was quietly shelved and his career stalled. Another example of how dark Suge Knight's business practices really were. As Dre started over, he did something no one saw coming and found a new protege, a white rapper from Detroit named Eminem. And to Suge Knight, this wasn't just Dre's next artist. It was another rapper he believed should belong to Death Row. After Dr. Dre left Death Row and launched Aftermath Entertainment, he would eventually sign Eminem, who would become one of the biggest artists in music. As Eminem's buzz grew, he became an instant target in Dre's beef with Suge Knight and his resentment towards Dre's success outside of Death Row. According to Eminem's former bodyguard, Big Nas, Suge Knight allegedly sent his goons to confront Eminem in Hawaii. Eminem, Dre, Snoop, and others were in Hawaii for the Breakup to Makeup reunion show. Big Nas described how upon landing, police warned them that Death Row affiliates were already on the island and that a large group of Death Row goons had been sent to interfere with the show.
So now it goes from getting your luggage, it goes from, we're in Hawaii, we're gonna have a nice time, we're gonna go shopping, coconut drinks and all this other shit, to, oh shit, to putting on bulletproof vests, loading guns, putting on vests in the van. All you could hear, when we got in that van, nobody said shit. All you could hear was the locking and loading of 40 cals, Desert Eagles, the Velcro, a bulletproof vest put on. So all you heard was click, clack, snip, snap, shh, 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 clack, click, clack, clack. That's all you heard. Nobody said shit in a 15-passenger van. And as we're riding past the front part of the airport, you see a sea of Death Row guys. They got on red and black Death Row jerseys. So they came to watch and witness the Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg breakup to make up reunion.
On the return flight, some of the same men were reportedly on board, and Eminem had to assert his stance, directly telling them that he was committed to Dre, not Suge's camp.
That's where it gets interesting trying to leave.
Right, so you guys get on the plane, and they're on the plane with you.
These guys are on the plane with us, man. On the plane.
All of them?
Shit, it was enough.
But this wasn't the only time Suge Knight and his goons tried confronting Eminem. Another confrontation happened at the 2001 Source Awards. Big Naz, Eminem's bodyguard, says that Suge Knight allegedly sent goons to try to strong-arm Eminem once again. Big Naz recounted that the event's seating arrangement kept bodyguards away from their artists, leaving Eminem alone and surrounded by Suge's henchmen. As Eminem became visibly uncomfortable, Naz ran through the crowd to pull him out and bring him to safety.
M was walking to his seat, I'm standing off to the side, and M was cut off on his way to his seat, and all these guys in red shirts surrounded him. And I'm looking at M's face, and I'm looking at these guys. I'm like, shit, something ain't right. So I start making my way around to come up the aisle, and next thing I know, you see all these guys talking about Death Row, motherfucker, Death Row. Death Row, motherfucker, Death Row. So by this time, I cut in, I step in front of M, I push the guys back. I'm like, yo, what the fuck going on here, man? He said, Death Row, motherfucker, this Death Row about, this Death Row life. I was like, Death Row, what does it got to do with him? He said, hey, man, Suge sent him a message. I was like, oh, shit. We in the middle of this Dre and Suge shit.
Eminem reportedly recorded a brutal diss track targeting both Ja Rule and Suge Knight. The song, widely referred to by fans as Smack You, was recorded in 2003, but was never officially released at the time because Dre advised Eminem not to escalate his beef with Suge publicly. Smack You remained locked in the vault for more than 2 decades until it surfaced online as a part of a large leak in January 2025 that included unreleased material from Eminem's archives. Fans later compiled it into a bootleg collection unofficially titled Straight from the Lab 3. The nearly 5.5-minute track opens with a sample and homage to Tupac. In his verses, Eminem delivers some of the hardest bars of his career. Directly rapping, he holds Suge responsible for the deaths of the 2 greatest rappers to ever grace the face of this planet, referencing longtime rumors about Suge Knight's alleged role in the murders of Tupac and Biggie, a claim that has never been proven but has circulated widely in hip-hop. The track even drew a response from Suge Knight's son, Suge J. Knight, who later recorded a reply of his own, asserting that it was unfair for Eminem to release a song when his father couldn't defend himself. Eminem would even mention in his 2004 track, Like Toy Soldiers, that Dre told him to stay out of his beef with Suge Knight. Suge Knight never saw Eminem as just another rapper. To him, Eminem was a way to get back at Dr. Dre and reclaim the throne he believed he never lost. But the war with Aftermath wasn't over, because standing right beside Eminem was another artist Suge Knight couldn't ignore, 50 Cent. When 50 Cent burst onto the scene in the early 2000s, signing with Dr. Dre and Eminem's Aftermath and Shady labels before dominating the charts with Get Rich or Die Tryin', his rise didn't go unnoticed. His success put him directly on the radar of none other than Suge Knight. One of the most widely cited moments in this unofficial beef came from a story told by D12's Bizarre, who recalled a run-in with Suge during the filming of 50 Cent's In Da Club music video. According to him, Suge Knight showed up unannounced on the set, accompanied by a large group of people described as 30 Mexicans in multiple retellings, causing the shoot to briefly halt and creating a standoff. When asked what he wanted, Suge simply stood and smoked a cigar before leaving to intimidate 50 Cent.
The record is out.
Okay, the record is out. So
It's out. In the club video shoot. And man, I just couldn't believe it. I didn't understand. Like, so we in the video, all you heard was, Suge is coming! Yo, bro, Suge is coming! So I'm like, yo, I swear to God, cameras are falling, dancers are running, lights. Shit is niggas. Everybody's running. Suge is coming. So we couldn't believe it. Like, I'm from New York. I never seen no shit like that. Yo, bro, dancers, the backup dancers are running. Everybody's running this shit. They running. Yo, cameras was falling and shit. Cameraman, Suge is coming. So Suge came. He had some Mexican. Now we from New York. You ain't never seen a with a tattoo on his forehead. 118th Street crew. I'm like, what the got a tattoo on his face, homie. That's the first time, like, before Lil Wayne and all that. That's the first time I seen a with, like, tattoo on his eyes. Mexican, 18th Street. So it's just Suge just got the cigar. He just like that. He's like a pressure guy.
Though Suge's attempts to intimidate 50 Cent didn't work, that didn't stop Suge. There's a story told by Russell Simmons that during an early 50 Cent video shoot, Suge Knight and his entourage pulled up once again. According to Simmons, 50 laughed, ran for a weapon, and allegedly chased him off the set with an Uzi.
Because he's sitting there, they're filming a video, and Suge Knight, if you know the polarizing figure, sitting there with a gun in his lap, and there's 4 other guys, and they're all like really menacing. And they're going to extort the video. And 50 Cent sees them, starts laughing, and starts running full speed. He runs to his trailer, gets a Uzi, and runs out and chases them. And they get in the car and drive off. He barks at it like a dog.
Another moment in the beef came not on record, but in a club in Los Angeles. DJ Who Kid, 50 Cent's longtime DJ, says he was booked to spin when Suge Knight suddenly appeared outside the venue, angry over a leaked 50 Cent and Tupac record. According to Who Kid, Suge had even arranged for goons to be at the club, forcing him and his crew to flee out the back as gang members with knives chased them down the street. Police intervened and Who Kid escaped, but the incident showed just how seriously Suge took anything he viewed as disrespectful on his turf. While 50 Cent represented the future Suge couldn't control, one name from his past cut far deeper: Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg's rise can't be separated from Suge Knight and Death Row Records in the early 90s. After Dr. Dre put him on, he was signed to the label, and Doggy Style helped define an era of hip-hop. That level of success built genuine loyalty, so much so that Snoop has openly said Suge changed his life. But their relationship would quickly fade. With Death Row spiraling after Tupac's death, Snoop decided to leave the label in 1998 and signed with No Limit Records. Snoop felt as if he wasn't being paid properly and that Suge was screwing him over out of his publishing. Plus, the environment at Death Row became extremely toxic. Suge Knight didn't like how Snoop jumped ship, and this is when Snoop began publicly dissing Suge Knight. Suge tried to tarnish Snoop's name after he walked away from Death Row, just like he did to Dre. By the early 2000s, the split between Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight was no longer quiet on wax. In 2002, Snoop aired out everything with Pimp Slapped, a track off Paid the Cost to Be the Boss. This track wasn't subliminal. This was Snoop Dogg going straight at Suge Knight. Snoop called Suge out directly about his strong-arm business tactics. The record cut deep on multiple levels. Snoop painted Suge as bitter and jealous, and questioned where the money really went. What made the track hit harder was the timing. Suge was already losing his grip on the industry, buried in legal trouble, while Snoop was still standing free, rich, and untouchable. Even the visuals backed it up. Pimp Slapped wasn't just a diss record, it was Snoop burying the hatchet, just a clear message to the man who once controlled everything. In 2022, Snoop Dogg took ownership of Death Row Records, acquiring the label and its catalog from Blackstone's MNRK Music Group. This would ultimately reignite the beef with Suge. From prison, Suge Knight has repeatedly gone public with attacks on Snoop, questioning the legitimacy of the purchase and accusing him of disrespecting the legacy Suge claims he built. But Snoop Dogg wasn't the final chapter in Suge Knight's list of enemies. At the center of that was the only one who truly tested Suge Knight's gangster. James Rosemond, better known as Jimmy Henchman, was a Brooklyn-born music executive and manager who worked with artists like The Game, Salt and Pepper, Akon, and Sean Kingston earlier in his career. He later became infamous as a convicted drug trafficker and murderer, currently serving multiple life sentences. Jimmy's upbringing was riddled with crime. He started jugging and robbing at a young age. While Suge Knight was used to bullying executives in the industry, he met his match with Jimmy Henchman. In one account shared by alleged West Coast Rolling 60s kingpin Big U, Suge Knight reportedly showed up with about 15 cars of goons to pick up Big U. Things escalated, but Big U managed to calm tensions. Suge Knight and Jimmy Henchman were always on the verge of clashing, but that never happened. Until one night in 2005. In August 2005, just before the MTV Video Music Awards in Miami, Suge Knight was attending a pre-award show hosted by Kanye West at the Shore Club on Miami Beach. That night, as Suge sat in the VIP area, a gunman approached and opened fire, striking Suge in the upper leg. Suge was rushed to a local hospital where he underwent surgery to remove the bullet and repair a broken bone. Witness accounts describe the scene as chaotic, with partygoers fleeing as shots rang out. At the time, the shooter remained unknown, and details about identification were limited. Police interviewed witnesses in hopes of creating a composite sketch, but no immediate arrest followed. In the years followed, people close to the situation claimed that the shooting was not random, but ordered by Jimmy Henchman, who was at the party that night in the same building as Suge. According to those reports, Henchman allegedly paid someone $10,000 to carry out the attack on Suge at the party. The account came from cooperating witness speaking to federal investigators, and it directly ties Henchman to the order of the shooting. However, it's important to be clear that no public criminal charges were ever filed against Henchman for the shooting, and no trial established his involvement in a court of law. The connection comes from reported federal testimony and accounts from people in the hip-hop world, not a public conviction tied to this event. According to veteran industry photographer Johnny Nunez, who was there that night, he said that Suge Knight allegedly blew a cigar in Jimmy's face, and that's when Jimmy allegedly gave the green light for Suge to be shot. He claims that Jimmy allegedly wanted Johnny Nunez to take a photo of Suge getting shot.
Jimmy Henchman tells me, Johnny, come get the shot. And I remember that the Game was there, and I knew that Suge Knight had beef with the Game. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, excuse me. The Game wasn't there. Jimmy was there, who managed the Game at the time. Right. And he says, come with me, I want you to take this photograph. But I just saw Suge Knight by the bar. I said, Jimmy, I don't think it's a wise idea to go over there. He said, nah, it's a wise idea. Get your camera. When I give you the head nod, I want you to get this photo. I'm like, well, okay. So next thing I know, I follow him. And there's Suge Knight leaned up against the bar, and he was, with his talented blow, he'd make a perfect circle of a cigar smoke. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, what the hell? So next thing I saw Suge inhale, and when he exhaled, he blew out a perfect circular ring of smoke right into Jimmy's face. And then Jimmy went one head nod to the left, and then he looked at me and one head nod to me. I'm like, what am I shooting? some guy with a musket just comes from behind Suge. Boom! Shoots him right there. I'm like, holy shit.
After this incident, the beef was far from over. According to West Coast manager Wack 100, there was another incident in LA where Suge Knight allegedly pulled up on Jimmy Henchman with a bunch of goons while he was by himself. This allegedly led to Jimmy to flee the scene as he was outnumbered. Now, according to Wack 100, later that day, Jimmy Henchman got on a three-way call with Suge Knight and allegedly told him, quote, "Next time, I'll pay another shooter to raise the barrel," which could be in reference to when Suge was shot in the leg, allegedly by the ordering of Jimmy Henchman, but Jimmy allegedly says that next time, the gun barrel will be raised. Pretty haunting. Now Suge Knight found himself potentially spending the rest of his life behind bars. Suge Knight didn't fall because the industry turned on him. He fell because of how he moved. For years, he handled business with fear and threats. That worked until it didn't. The music lived on without him, the label changed hands, and the power was gone. What stayed were the consequences. Suge Knight's story isn't about success or failure in hip-hop. It's about when you mix money, ego, and violence, and think it won't come back to haunt you